Hey everyone, welcome back to Shawn Talks Wrestling. In today's video, I'll be ranking every single opening match of every WrestleMania card. An opening match is the one that starts off the show and sets the tone for the rest of the night. I'll be starting off with WrestleMania 1 in 1985 and counting all the way down to WrestleMania 40, both Night 1 and Night 2. And just to note for this video, WrestleMania 2 had 3 different shows which include opening matches for each individual show, so I'll be counting those as 3 separate matches entirely. In latter WrestleManias, we know they had Night 1 and Night 2, so I'll be counting both nights' opening matches as different openers. Without further ado, let's get into the ranking. Alright, starting off with WrestleMania 1, and we get the opening match of Tito Santana taking on the Executioner, who was played by Buddy Rose at the time. So for this match, the Executioner got a bit of offense in and worked the leg of Tito Santana to play up that heel role, but it was mostly Tito Santana doing the work, and towards the end, we get the finish of Tito Santana landing a flying forearm, which kayfabe knocked out the Executioner and allowed him to set up that figure 4 leg lock for the submission win. When you look back to the 80s, there wasn't much wrestling going on in terms of like those high-flying moves or suplexes or what we're used to seeing in this era of wrestling. Where in the 80s, you're more used to seeing the clubs to the back, the rakes to the eye, close fist punches, just your typical brawler type wrestling, and that's exactly what we got in this match. So if I'm going to rate this on pure entertainment value from my point of view, I'm going to rate this as a good match just because I was thoroughly entertained from start to finish and the result was enjoyable. So for that reason, I'm going to be putting it in the good tier. So WrestleMania 2 is a bit of an interesting year. We had 3 separate shows, and that means that there were 3 individual opening matches, and that's how I'll be rating each one. So starting off with the show at the Nassau Coliseum, we have 2 beefy men with Paul Orndorff taking on the magnificent Muraco. So this was a pretty heated affair with both men getting a bit of offense in, going for that test of strength, clubbing each other in the back. It's one of those matches you expect to see 2 big guys just showing off their strength and trying to one-up each other during the match. So this was a pretty short match. It was about 4 minutes and 10 seconds. And towards the end, we have both men spilling to the outside where things got really heated. They were not happy with one another. They were trying to one-up each other constantly. And when neither one was gaining the upper hand, it got really heated. So at one point, they're just wrestling on the outside, continuing to trade blows. And what we didn't notice was that the referee was initiating that 10 count, which when I was watching, I didn't really notice him making a count itself. It looked more like he was warning the guys to get back in the ring. But eventually he waves off the match and it was deemed a double count out where both men were counted out in this match. So fans were pretty upset about this result. They were chanting BS. And if I'm being honest, I'd be joining on with them. This match kind of felt like it was going somewhere. And then when it spilled to the outside and was ruled a double count out, it felt like it kind of ended abruptly. So for that reason, it's not the result you would want to get out of a night where you're only promised 4 matches on the card. Remember, WrestleMania 2 was split into 3 individual shows, so each show got about 4 matches, and if that's the way you're going to open up one of your shows, it's really not going to please the crowd. For that reason, I'm going to put this one in average. I did enjoy the wrestling part of the match, but when it comes down to the result, it kind of bumps it down a little bit for me. So the second WrestleMania 2 opener took place in the Rosemont Horizon, and unfortunately they got the worst of the 3 for this WrestleMania. So this one was where the Ladies Championship, it was called the Ladies Championship at that point. It was defended by the fabulous Moolah against Velvet McIntyre, who was the challenger. And this one lasted 1:25, and to be honest, you would have been best served just getting up from your couch and making yourself a pot of coffee than watching this match. Velvet got some offense eventually, but we're talking a mere matter of seconds. It was mostly fabulous Moolah throwing her back and forth across the ring by her hair. At one point, Velvet does get the upper hand and manages to knock fabulous Moolah to the ground. And then towards the end of the match, Velvet McIntyre goes for a splash, misses, and then fabulous Moolah just covers her for a pin. And that was what the match was. It was 85 seconds of just no coordination, no chemistry in the ring, and just felt like it was a match to get it out of the way. They got 1:25, and that was pretty much it. So unfortunately, this match goes into the trash category. It's the first one on the list going into the trash. There really wasn't much to enjoy, if anything at all. And it's really indicative to see where women's wrestling was going at that time. So the final show of WrestleMania 2 took place at the Los Angeles Memorial Sports Arena, and this was by far the best opening match of the night. This one featured Ricky Steamboat going one-on-one with Hercules Hernandez, And I think if you can get any match with Ricky Steamboat in it, you're guaranteed at least a good match and probably a great one. So Hercules Hernandez played the powerhouse heel, which meant Steamboat was going to rely more on his speed and technicality side, and that's pretty much what this match was. It was Hercules working over Ricky Steamboat, kind of playing off that empathetic babyface that you want to see come back, and Hercules Hernandez kept him grounded at all times until eventually we got that comeback from Ricky. So this one did have solid pacing with good build to Steamboat's comeback and Hercules Hernandez looking really strong with his power moves. And eventually we did get that comeback with Ricky Steamboat going over in the match. He would eventually win at about 7 minutes and 27 seconds. And I just thought overall this was the best bang for your buck from WrestleMania 2 among the opening matches of the night. You got the most wrestling out of it. You got the most storytelling out of it. And again, like I said, Ricky Steamboat, if he's in the match, you're guaranteed at least a good one. So for me, I'm going to be placing this one in the great category. I think that for its time, this was 1986. So again, it leans more towards that mid-80s style of wrestling. But for what it's worth and the value that we got a lot more wrestling from the previous matches. So for that reason, I'm going to put it just slightly above Tito, Santana, and the Executioner and into the great category. So WrestleMania 3 in 1987 took a different direction, going tag team action, and we got the Can-Am connection of Rick Martel and Tom Zenk taking on Bob Orton and the Magnificent Muraco. So this one was actually a surprisingly good match from start to finish. We had Bob Orton and Magnificent Muraco looking as good as ever and the more experienced of the tag teams, and the lesser experienced Can-Am connection, while Rick Martel and Tom Zenk had some nice looking tag team spots that utilized their speed. By now you'll notice that the late 80s, early 90s loved that type of style of matchup where you had the bigger guys taking on the smaller, more speedy technical side, and it really made for a good match because you had the heels dominating for the most part, and then it led to the comeback where the baby faces utilized their speed and their technicality, and in this case with the Can-Am connection they got a lot of tag team spots in where they put their teamwork to good use. So in this one, Martel and Zenk went over just about 5 minutes with some nice combination moves, and overall the match made everyone involved look really good. So the opener was quick, it was enjoyable. I think from start to finish we got some decent spots here and there, and overall I'm going to rate this a good match. So I'm not particularly a fan of Battle Royale type matches outside of the Royal Rumble, but for WrestleMania 4 that's exactly what we got. It was a 20-man Battle Royale where the winner got this huge mammoth-sized trophy that doesn't really mean anything. You don't get anything out of it outside of the trophy itself. But in this case, I actually really enjoyed this match more than I thought I would. So one of the strongest points of this match was that it had an ending that I think covered up some of the weaker moments of the match. So the finish of this match involved the final three of Bad News Brown, Junkyard Dog, and Bret Hart. And I think the way they went about it was really interesting, and it made for an enjoyable finish to the match. So at one point you had Bad News Brown and Bret Hart, who were the heels of the match, taking on Junkyard Dog in kind of a 2-on-1 attack, just to get him eliminated and get him out of there. And that's exactly what they did. They got the double team, they tossed him out, and then it was just Bret Hart and Bad News Brown. Now, the really funny thing about this was that they were kind of celebrating that they eliminated Junkyard Dog, but the match wasn't over yet because it's one winner takes it all. So eventually Bad News Brown turned the tables on Bret Hart and kind of screwed him over in a sense, but not really because it was every man for himself. And he ended up tossing Bret Hart over the ropes and was the winner of the 20-man Battle Royale. What I really liked about the ending post-match was that Bret Hart gets back into the ring feeling like he's screwed over. That's kind of a trend that happened in his career with the WWF. And he beat down Bad News Brown, threw him out of the ring, and then went for the trophy. And when I say he destroyed this trophy, I'm not doing it justice. He broke this down into pieces by smashing it all over the ring. It was pretty fun to watch. If you're a Bret Hart fan like I am, this ending to the match was a lot of fun, and you get to see more of that mean streak of Bret that he had inside of him. So this one's another good match for me. I enjoyed it more than I thought I would, and I think it's better than average, but not quite there at great yet. So the final WrestleMania opener of the 80s is unfortunately a bad one for me. We had Hercules, who is now a babyface, taking on Haku, who was playing the King role that he had after winning the King of the Ring, and he came out to what would eventually be Jerry Lawler's main theme. It was that King theme that the King of the Ring winners would come out to at the time. Unfortunately, this one just wasn't really fun to watch. It had a bit of a weird pacing because both men are pretty large in size, and it was weird to watch Hercules, who was the babyface, kind of taking that backseat to Haku's offense. And more so, the ending to it just didn't really make sense to me. We had Haku, who reversed a Hercules move into a super kick, and then he went to the top rope for one of his big moves, and Hercules got out of the way of that, and it set up for the finish where it's, I kid you not, one of the worst bridge pins I've ever seen. So Hercules gave him that back body drop, and it was supposed to be a back body drop into a bridge for the pin. But at the count of 2, Hercules kind of just flops to the ground because he wasn't able to hold the bridge, and it just looked pretty awful. So unfortunately, this match was all over the place, and it was just really not for me. I'm going to have to put this into the bad category. I just didn't enjoy it whatsoever, and unfortunately, it lands there. And the same goes for WrestleMania 6 in 1990, and I'm just going to preface this. I hated this match. At WrestleMania 6, Rick Martel took on Koko Ware in a battle of the strongest personalities. Rick Martel, who was in the Can-Am Connection a couple years prior, is now sporting this model gimmick, which at the time in the early 90s, everyone had to have this stupid gimmick. And Rick Martel's was that he was a model who came out with this giant perfume bottle that he would spray all over himself. It made absolutely no sense. But you had Koko Ware on the other side, who was super over as a babyface. He would come out, do a dance, he would have the bird with him, and it was just a really fun sight to see. Unfortunately, this was such a short match that neither men could tell much of a story in it. They got 3 minutes and 51 seconds, and Martel ended up winning by a submission, which I thought was not really the decision that the fans wanted. They were obviously behind Koko Ware, and I thought that it could have been a nice way to open up WrestleMania that year by having Koko Ware go over and get the crowd settled in with a nice win. Unfortunately, we didn't get that. Overall, I'm just not a fan of the outcome or the 90s switch into more cartoonish gimmicks, which is what Martel had at this point. Is it trash? I don't really think so. I think it's just above the trash point, but I do think it's bad. It's along the same lines of Hercules, Hernandez, and Haku, so that's where I'm going to be placing it, unfortunately. WrestleMania 7 went tag team with their opening match and featured the Rockers, Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty, taking on the team of the Barbarian and Haku. And I cannot state this enough, the Rockers were so over with this crowd, and it was really fun to watch. I think it's understated how good Marty Jannetty is as a tag team competitor and as a singles guy. I think we often get lost in the Shawn Michaels parade, where he was obviously the better of the two, but it can't be stated enough how good Marty Jannetty is, and in this match, that's what we saw. And once again, you have the speedier, younger tag team taking on that stronger, brute force team of Barbarian and Haku. So we pretty much get the same story we got with Can-Am Connection taking on Bob Orton and Muraco. And overall, it's just a fun match to watch. The match had such good pacing. It had not one, but 2 hot tags. And again, the crowd was so behind the Rockers that every time they got in that hot tag and started to build up that offense, you could hear the crowd starting to come alive and start to cheer super loud. It was really fun. Overall, I just really love watching the Rockers in tag team action, and they picked up the win against the Barbarian and Haku. The crowd was super into it the entire time, and overall, it was just a really enjoyable match. So I'm going to be placing this one in great. Ironically, at WrestleMania 8, Shawn Michaels once again opens up the show, but this time as a singles heel wrestler. So this comes after the breakup with Marty Jannetty, ending the Rockers and going their separate ways. And that's when Shawn Michaels really started to step into his own, starting to build up that Heartbreak Kid personality. He came out with Sensational Sherry, had that whole shtick with the mirror and everything. It was really entertaining at the time. His opponent in this match was Tito Santana, who, if you remember, he was the one that opened up WrestleMania 1 back in 1985. He's opening up this match at WrestleMania 8, but now he has this weird matador gimmick where, again, early 90s, everyone has to have this professional gimmick where they take on the profession of something. And in Tito Santana's case, well, obviously he's a Latino type wrestler, so he has to have a Latino personality, a matador. It's with the times, it's super annoying, and it wasn't fun. Eventually they got out of it. They realized that fans weren't really interested in that type of gimmick. But for WrestleMania 8, that's what we got with Tito Santana, the matador, against the Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels. So fortunately for this match, they did get the time that they deserved at 10 minutes, 38 seconds, and it allowed them to build that story up, and they looked great in the match, the both of them. Shawn, of course, was selling his heart out. He was one of the, if not the best seller of the early 90s with how he went about taking a bump, and throughout the match, it was really fun to watch. The ending, though, was a bit weird, and it looked like they were going for that heel finish where the heel pins the face and then the manager on the outside hooks the legs down to the ground to prevent him from kicking out. It looked like that was what they were going for, with Sensational Sherry kind of hanging around that area, and Tito Santana's legs were close to the ropes to kind of set up for that leg hook, but Sensational Sherry never got to it, which left everyone confused. Shawn Michaels did pick up the win. He got the pin for that spot, but then Tito Santana kind of stood up and looked really confused. So I think that that's what they were going for and ultimately didn't pull it off. And it was a bit of a sloppy finish for me. It didn't impact the overall match for me per se compared to that WrestleMania 2 match where we had the double count out. So for that reason, I'm going to put it in good. I do think this had the potential to be great, as any Shawn Michaels match will have that potential, but for this one, it fell just a little bit short, and I'm going to put it in the good category. So at WrestleMania 9, for a third year in a row, Shawn Michaels would open up a match, and I do have to make note that it's kind of funny to point out that at the WrestleMania 7 show, he came out to the Rockers theme. WrestleMania 8, he came out to his singles theme, where it's the Heartbreak Kid, but sang by Sensational Sherry. And then the following year at WrestleMania 9, that's when he came out to what would become his theme that he would use over the decades, where he would sing it himself. So it's kind of funny that over those 3 years, he came out to 3 different themes, albeit the last 2 themes were similar with the change up of who sang it. So I thought that was kind of funny. So this time around, Shawn Michaels would defend the Intercontinental Championship against Tatanka, and this would be the longest match up until that point, where they would get a total of 18 minutes and 13 seconds, the longest match by far. In fact, at WrestleMania 2, it kind of eclipsed all 3 opening matches combined. Pretty fun to see. So in this one, we had some shenanigans going on. Shawn Michaels had Luna Vachon in his corner, and Tatanka had Sensational Sherry in his. Sensational Sherry used to be with Shawn Michaels, but after they split ways, she sided with Tatanka for this match to kind of give the middle finger to Shawn Michaels. And because of that, we had a lot of things going on by ringside every time Shawn Michaels would spill out to the outside. There were a couple of moments where Luna Vachon would go over to check in on him, and Sherry would circle around and tell Luna Vachon to get lost. And throughout the match, that happened multiple times. While there was a lot going on by ringside, I don't think it distracted from this match, because what happened in the ring was fucking awesome. Where I think this match goes horribly wrong is the ending, which when I was watching this as a kid, it confused the hell out of me. And on the rewatch, it didn't do much better. It still confused me. So what happened was, again, the action spilled to the outside, and the referee was trying to pull the 2 guys apart. And Shawn Michaels just shoves the referee for no reason. And the referee goes down. He takes his bump and he's out for a bit. And the match continues on in the ring, where Shawn Michaels and Tatanka are going back and forth. And eventually Tatanka lands his finishing move, and he goes for the pin, and the referee gets back into the ring. The referee goes down and looks like he's about to make the count, and then decides that the match is over and Shawn Michaels has been disqualified. Which, again, when Shawn Michaels shoved the referee, you would think that once the referee got up, he would disqualify him right away. But in this case, the ref gets back into the ring and looks like he's about to make the pinfall. It made absolutely no sense, and it completely took away from the match that they had built. What I will say is that it's still good, because the match was just entertaining overall, but it's one of those cases where the finish to the match kind of ruins a bit of it. So for me, this match had the potential to be a great match, but it just falls short just for that ending alone, and I'm going to have to place this one in good as well. Moving on to WrestleMania 10 in 1994, and as Macho Man Randy Savage once said, this match truly was the cream of the crop. To tell you just how good this match was, the next time a WrestleMania opener went 20 plus minutes was at WrestleMania 23, and that was a Money in the Bank ladder match. You actually have to go all the way to WrestleMania 30, 2 decades later, to get your next singles match that goes that distance. And what more needs to be said here? You have 2 world-class athletes who have the ability like none other to tell a beautiful story in the ring. They have the athleticism to wrestle their hearts out, and they have that brother versus brother rivalry going on. I'll try not to honey glaze donut this match too much, but just the spot of Owen pulling Bret's hair only for Bret to slap his hand away and give him that point, like, we're Hart brothers, we don't do that, we wrestle, that's one of the greatest things I've seen in that match. This match also had tons of false finishes that could have gone either way, and either man could have won, to be honest, which sold the resilience of both Hart brothers. The ending to this match was the cherry on top of the sundae, as the chemistry that both Hart brothers had was just through the roof. We all thought Bret was winning that match, so when Owen picked up the pinfall, I think the entire crowd was just stunned. It was such a great moment for both of them, and for us, we got an all-time GOAT match. So this one's going right to the top. It's our very first entry into the GOAT category, but it won't be our last. The following year is a major step backwards, but in all fairness, I don't think it's the fault of either tag team in this match. WrestleMania 11 opened up with Lex Luger and British Bulldog tagging up as the Allied Powers against the Blue Brothers, Jacob Blue and Eli Blue, the tag team made up of twin brothers. And when they came out, it looked like they were about to get stomped by their opponents, and that's pretty much what we got. It was a really short match lasting about 6 minutes and 34 seconds, and it was mostly just the Allied Powers being on offense until the Blue Brothers played up that twin magic where they swapped places. Didn't work out for them in their favor. The Allied Powers picked up the win, much to the delight of the crowd, and overall, it's just your average match. It's not any better than that. It's not bad, but it doesn't really do much for me, so it's going to go into average. Next up at WrestleMania 12, they went a completely different route with a stipulation and a 6-man tag match. So on one side, we got the British Bulldog with Owen, Hart, and Vader taking on the team of a mishmash of Ahmed Johnson, Jake Roberts, and Yokozuna. So the stipulation for this match is that if Yokozuna's team won, Yokozuna himself would get 5 minutes alone with Jim Cornette inside a wrestling ring. And I think we all know what he would have done with them. Unfortunately, we didn't get that, as the team of British Bulldog, Owen Hart, and Vader would go on to win. And overall, it was just a really entertaining tag team match. I think that there wasn't much more they could have done, and it was that mishmash of 3 guys with 3 guys, did the most of what they could with that match, and for the most part, it was pretty good. So I think I'm going to place it in the good category. Again, I don't think they could have done much more with what they had to work with, so for it to be a good match was the best outcome you could have gotten. In 1997, WrestleMania 13 opened up with a 4-team elimination tag team match where the winner got a shot at the tag team titles, which unfortunately didn't take place on the same night. I don't know why, but it just didn't. The teams consisted of the Headbangers, Doug Furnas and Phil LaFawn, the Godwins, and the New Blackjacks, featuring Barry Windham, the son of the original Blackjack member Blackjack Mulligan, and also uncle to Bray Wyatt and Bo Dallas, and his tag team partner Bradshaw, who obviously, as we know, John Bradshaw Layfield and Bradshaw of the APA, the Acolytes. Unfortunately, half of the tag teams in this match were thrown out due to a brawl that went on outside of the ring. So what happened was 2 tag teams ended up getting disqualified by taking the action to the outside. It was the team of Doug Furnas and Phil LaFawn and the New Blackjacks. And what led to it was Bradshaw shoved the referee out of the way, which got the New Blackjacks eliminated from the match. But strangely enough, it also got the team of Doug Furnas and Phil LaFawn eliminated, even though they didn't really do anything to the ref. Didn't really make any sense, but I felt like it was just their way of kind of getting 2 tag teams out of there so they could focus on the 2 remaining teams in the match, which turned out to be the Headbangers versus the Godwins. So the Headbangers ended up winning the thing, which the crowd seemed to enjoy, as they were quite over as the pranksters. If you remember the Headbangers, they came out to kind of that moshing music. They wore the pleated skirts and they would do just a whole bunch of shenanigans, and the crowd really ate it up. So it was nice to see them get the win and get the crowd going for that match. Overall, though, I do have to put this in average. It kind of was a shame that they eliminated half the teams early on into the match and used that as a tool to get to the main point of the 2 last tag teams. So it took away a bit of the excitement for me. But again, overall, I think it's just average. Allow me to take a moment to let you know that I am now a WWE Shop affiliate. If you plan on making any WWE Shop purchases, doing so using my affiliate link in the description of this video would be a great help in the growth of this channel. I'm currently building an awesome new office to host this channel on, and every little bit helps. Thank you so much for your support. Now, let's get back to the video. WrestleMania 14, which is one of my all-time favorites. I must have rented that VHS cassette tape multiple times and watched the show 100 plus times. It featured a 15-team elimination match, which for the most part, it was the Legion of Doom's return to the ring that was the big story out of the match. If you watch the beginning of the show, you'll see that the Nation of Domination with Farouk and Mustafa, they got the opening entrance, but most of the tag teams were already by ringside. So they got that entrance, and then it was the shocking surprise, which was that mystery tag team that was built out to be the Legion of Doom, who were returning for that big pop to the crowd. So this match went on for 8 minutes and 19 seconds, and I think that to the surprise of nobody, the Legion of Doom got the most out of this match. They were returning for that big showdown, and they eventually went on to win the match. So overall, it was another average match for me. It was kind of building towards that one team that everyone expected to win, which they did. It was enjoyable to a certain extent, but I think with so many tag teams in the match and most of them getting eliminated without us even noticing, it took away from that excitement for me. And so for that reason, I have to put it also in average. WrestleMania 15 was the first WrestleMania to feature the Hardcore Championship, which was established in November 2018 when it was handed to Mankind as a manipulation tactic by the corporation to keep Mankind away from the WWF Championship. Unfortunately, this match didn't feature him. It was Billy Gunn who walked into the show as the Hardcore Champion, and he took on both Hardcore Holly and Al Snow in a triple threat match. We don't really get a whole lot of weapon use early on, as all three men are battling in and outside of the ring and establishing which two participants are going to be most active while the third man kind of trails off behind. But eventually we do get those spots with the weapons that get the crowd excited. The show was in Philadelphia, so when Al Snow brought out the hockey stick, the fans got a nice pop out of it, and it was cool to see some different varieties of weapons being used. And then we also got this weird spot where Al Snow had a broomstick which was broken in half, and he started to do his best Steve Blackman impersonation. It's pretty fun to watch, but at the same time, it took away from the seriousness of the match and made it a little silly. But for the time with Al Snow and his shenanigans, it was kind of expected. And then the finish to the match also plays into that psychology of the triple threat and what makes it so dangerous. Billy Gunn hits Al Snow with the Faymaster, his finishing move, only for Hardcore Holly to knock Billy Gunn out of the way and pin Al Snow and become the new Hardcore Champion. So all in all, it was a fun way to get the crowd going, albeit I'm not the biggest fan of hardcore wrestling, especially at this time. So for me, it was just average, but I do know that a lot of people like this match and would probably place it in good. So if you are one of those people that preferred this match to be in good, let me know in the comments down below. But for me personally, it's going to go into average. The big WrestleMania 2000 began with another tag team match, and this time it was the team of Big Boss Man and Bull Buchanan taking on the team of The Godfather and D'Lo Brown. Before I get into this match, can we all just appreciate Bull Buchanan and the Swiss Army knife that he was during his time with the WWF? The man came into the company as part of the Truth Commission, and then eventually went on to play roles like the Big Boss Man's sideman, a part of the Right to Censor, where he became tag team champions with The Godfather, who was in this match, and then he served as B2, which, if you remember, was the sidekick to John Cena during his Doctor of Thugonomics days. So he was all over the place. He accepted any role and he really went with it. All right, but back on track with this match, which unfortunately is not a very good one. There wasn't much chemistry going on between the two teams, and at times it felt disjointed. The crowd didn't really feel into it either until the few high spots, like when the Godfather set up for the Ho Train. Bull Buchanan actually hit one of my favorite spots of this match when he was Irish whipped into the corner, and he went from the ring canvas to leaping to the top rope and then turning as he jumped midair to give a clothesline to D'Lo Brown, which I thought showed off a lot of athleticism and caught many people off guard. Unfortunately, this match was riddled with poor pacing and a few botches here and there, and it prevented me from getting into it. I have to put this in the bad category. It just didn't hit any notes for me. WrestleMania 17 is one of those manias that has a special place in my heart and in the hearts of many, and this one opened up with Chris Jericho taking on William Regal for the Intercontinental Championship. Chris Jericho walked into the show as the champion, and William Regal walked in as the challenger, and someone who has never held the Intercontinental Championship up until that point. For a match that just got under 8 minutes, these two gave everything they had. And what was interesting about this match was that both were kind of those technician side with a submission finisher, where Regal had the Regal stretch and Jericho had his Walls of Jericho. So they kind of played into the similar style and who would get into that submission first and make the other tap out. And honestly, this feud was built pretty much on William Regal as the commissioner kind of screwing over Chris Jericho from time to time. And we had moments where Chris Jericho would piss in William Regal's tea and make him drink it. So there was a bit of that comedic side to this feud, but overall it was a feud that was pretty interesting at the time. So for an opener that also involves a title defense, you couldn't ask for much more except maybe a bit more time. The card was so stacked though, so I understand that they were running a tight ship, and for what they were given for the time, I thought Jericho and Regal did really, really well. For me, it's a solid entry into the good category. It's leaning more in towards great, but not quite there yet. But overall, I think for a match that started out WrestleMania 17, it's really, really good. So fast forward to a year later, and William Regal is now the Intercontinental Champion. He won that championship for the first time, and he walked into WrestleMania 18 as the champion. And the challenger on the other side was Rob Van Dam, who was super over with the crowd, as he always was. And this one actually set up to be a really fun match to watch. For the time that they were allotted at 6 minutes and 22 seconds, I think they maximized everything they could have done to tell the story that they wanted. You had Regal playing up the heel and keeping RVD on the ground with different variations of suplexes and holds. And then you slowly build towards that RVD comeback where he starts to build those moves up and get the crowd into it. And it was just really interesting. So towards the finish of the match, Regal does go for the brass knuckles, which if you remember, Regal loved to use the brass knuckles to get a win over the babyface as that heel approach. He goes for those brass knuckles, which the referee sees right away and takes them away. So William Regal takes out those brass knuckles from his trunks, and that pretty much sets up his own demise as RVD hits a spinning heel kick to knock both Regal and the brass knucks down to the ground. And then he hits his 5-star frog splash, pins Regal, and becomes the new Intercontinental Champion. I really wish this match got a little more time, as Regal's in-ring ability can't be understated how good he is, and RVD as the babyface, it set up that really solid matchup between a really unlikable heel and the super over babyface. So a little bit more time would have definitely suited this match. For the most part, though, I have to say it's good, and I'm going to put it in the good category, but again, with these two and how they interacted in the ring, I felt like if they could have gotten a couple more minutes at the very least, it could have been a great match. Heading into the 2003 WrestleMania card, Matt Hardy is the Cruiserweight Champion, and he's opening up with a title defense against Rey Mysterio, who is making his WrestleMania debut. Sadly, they just got 5 minutes and 37 seconds, which almost feels like an insult to both Matt Hardy and Rey Mysterio, who were both on top of their game at that time. Definitely felt like that match could have went twice as long, and they could have gotten that much more time to tell a story. Unfortunately, they didn't get it. I honestly think it was a surprise to see Matt Hardy retain the title. I think everyone was expecting Rey Mysterio to go over and win in his first WrestleMania match, but what we got instead was Matt pinning Rey Mysterio and hooking the ropes to get some leverage and stealing a win, which kind of shocked the crowd and me personally. I actually really want to place this match in good just because of the fact of how big of a Matt Hardy fan I was. I was big into the V1 era of Matt Hardy's career, and Rey Mysterio was just such an over babyface and so talented, but they were given such little time and not much of a story was able to be told in this one, so unfortunately it goes into average. I really want to place this in good. I think that, again, with twice as much time, it definitely could have been in at least good, but with the time constraints, it goes into average. The big 20th WrestleMania was notorious for some ups and downs, but in the opening match, we got Big Show defending the United States Championship against John Cena, who was making his WrestleMania in-ring debut. It's crazy when you watch this match to see how jacked John Cena is, because he's going toe-to-toe with Big Show, who kind of dwarfs him in size, and it's just really funny to see a really jacked up guy look so small compared to the Big Show. But to me, they were really able to tell a story of how strong John Cena was, but how mismatched he was in terms of power compared to the Big Show, where he would go for those powerful moves, and on any normal person, he would look really powerful and topple over them, but in the case of the Big Show, he just looked like a child. I mean, at one point, we even got an attitude adjustment, which at the time he called it the FU. It was kind of a play on Brock Lesnar's F5, and the setup for the move was pretty much the same, where they would hoist the opponent onto their shoulders. But at that point, John Cena was calling it the FU, kind of to give that FU to Brock Lesnar. Later on, they changed it to the attitude adjustment for that PG era vibe. But he hits the attitude adjustment on Big Show and goes for the pin, but Big Show kicks out at 2, which at that point was the very first time someone kicked out of the attitude adjustment. So into the finish of the match, John Cena goes for the chain, which the referee obviously identifies right away and takes the chain away. But that's when John Cena does his best William Regal impression, takes out the brass knucks, which had ward life on them, and clocks Big Show over the head with them, hits a second attitude adjustment and gets the pinfall for the win, and becomes the new United States champion. And also, it's his first single titles run of his career. Overall, I thought this match was really fun. It had that David versus Goliath vibe to it, and John Cena going over gives that underdog babyface the win and the United States title. So overall, I just thought it was a really fun match to watch, and I'm going to place this in the great category. I just think it's One of those matches that from start to finish, the story was told. It was fun to follow along to. There were no low notes in the match. There were no kind of rest periods where it felt like it was getting boring. So overall, I think it's great. WrestleMania 21 in 2005 featured Rey Mysterio and Eddie Guerrero going one-on-one, and this is how you want to tell the story of two friends who also happen to be tag team champions at the time, being at odds with one another and wanting to prove something to each other. At this time, Eddie was second-guessing himself as a singles wrestler despite being in a successful tag team with Rey and being the tag team champions at the time. In this case, he wasn't doing much winning. It was Rey getting most of the wins during their tag team phase, and when Eddie would go into singles competition, he would end up on the losing end of things, whereas Rey would continue to win. So it set up that little beef between the two where Eddie thinks he's much better. Rey obviously has the results to show that he's the better one, and they clash. Even though they're tag team champions, they're clashing, and they decide to settle it at WrestleMania 21. So this leads us into the match with Eddie wanting to prove himself by trying to defeat his friend in singles action, and the result is that the fans get an absolute stunner of a match to open up a WrestleMania. So I'm actually not a fan of the term real graps, as it's become overused in recent memory, but Jesus Christ, this was real graps. Two world-class wrestlers going toe-to-toe for 13 minutes is one of the best WrestleMania openers since Bret versus Owen. It was that good. If you're not a fan of either of these two and you're a bit fuzzy on how the match went, go ahead and give it another watch. I promise you it'll be worth your time. This one absolutely goes into the GOAT category. I think they gave everything they had in this match and put one of the best displays of athleticism I've ever seen for a WrestleMania opener. Obviously, Rey wins. He and Eddie embrace to show that they're in good spirits, and all is well that ends well. So this one's going directly in GOAT. Unfortunately, the same can't be said for the following year at WrestleMania 22, as Big Show and Kane defend their tag team titles against the team of Carlito and Chris Masters. I wasn't a fan of Big Show and Kane teaming up and the story that they told as unlikely allies and then becoming the tag team champions, especially at a time where we had some really good tag team action going on. Then you throw in a mismatch of Chris Masters and Carlito, and I think you know where this is going. For what it's worth, I thought Chris Masters looked great in this one despite not getting much out of the match, but for the most of it, we all knew it was coming. There was absolutely no chance Show and Kane were losing, and that's exactly what happened. The best I can say is that this match was over in under 7 minutes, and it was at the top of the show, but otherwise it was unforgivably bad. Which pains me to say because I love Kane, and the four guys deserve better than this, but this one unfortunately goes into the bad category. At WrestleMania 23, the Money in the Bank ladder match went down, featuring the likes of CM Punk, Randy Orton, Mr. Kennedy, Finlay, Matt Hardy, King Booker, Edge, and Jeff Hardy. It's an absolute monster of a match with plenty of names that had history with each other. You give me a ladder match involving both Hardy Boys, Edge, and CM Punk, and I'm already invested. And then you throw in some more big names. This one had more promise than any other match up until this point before the bell even rang. To boot, the concept of having a guaranteed title shot in a briefcase raised the stakes exponentially, and man, all 8 men had something to prove. As you'd expect with a large number of competitors that also happens to be an even number, the match split up where each one grabbed a dance partner and they all started duking it out. Inside the ring, outside the ring, using ladders, using other weapons. It was pandemonium chaos all over the place. Early on, Edge busted up CM Punk with the Hornswoggle ladder, which is that miniature ladder that Hornswoggle would use at certain points. We got the Hardy Boys using some teamwork with a ladder to take out some of the competition before duking it out with one another because, as you know, with the Money in the Bank ladder match, it's every man for himself. And we even had CM Punk doing the spot with the ladder over his head and spinning around, knocking everyone with the ladder until he eventually got speared by Edge, which took him and a couple other people out behind him. We even got a ladder spot involving Jeff jumping off the tall ladder from inside the ring onto Edge, who was placed on the ladder on the outside of the ring. It was just that crazy. There was so much going on in this match that at one point you didn't know what was going to happen next. The finish does involve more chaos as Punk gets RKO'd off the top of the ladder. Finlay and Hornswoggle were taken out by Mr. Kennedy, and eventually Kennedy grabs the briefcase and becomes Mr. Money in the Bank. Unfortunately, he'd later be misdiagnosed with an injury, which forced him to drop the briefcase to Edge, and we all know what happened from that point on. Edge went on to cash in the briefcase and become a champion, and it led on to so many great things in his career. As for what I thought of this match, it's hard to put it any lower than great, but it's not quite there to contend with the GOATs on the list. Still though, for this type of quality of match and all the participants that were involved, this can't go any lower than great. In 2008, John Bradshaw Layfield opened up WrestleMania 24 against Finlay in a Belfast Brawl match, which essentially is just a street fight with the Irish gimmick of the Belfast Brawl because Finlay's involved. So this is one of those matches where, of course, you're going to get a lot of furniture thrown into the ring and chaos ensuing. But I will say the good point of the match was that we had two participants that are known for beating the crap out of anyone they get into the ring with. You had John Bradshaw Layfield and Finlay, who are both known to fight. So that part made sense. And for the most part, there was a lot of chaos ensuing. But again, it's one of those matches where I don't find myself enjoying it all that much. I prefer much more to see a story unfolding in the ring between two athletes that are really, really good in the ring. And this wasn't one of those cases. This was just more shock value and how many weapon spots we can get out of it. And again, it's not my preferred style of wrestling. So this one unfortunately goes into the trash pile. We're back with the Money in the Bank ladder match opening at WrestleMania. It was actually the second match the previous year, and I wish it would have opened then too, so that I can talk about this match 3 years in a row. Only Punk and Finlay were returning from the WrestleMania 23 showcase in this match, while the other participants involved were Christian, Kane, Kofi Kingston, Mark Henry, MVP, and Shelton Benjamin, who made up the rest of the cast. Once again, they find a way to get a variety of different styles in the match that give us a bit of taste of everything. You have the high flyers mixed in with the brawlers, and then unlikely guys like Kane and Mark Henry, who are just going to powerhouse everyone. So I didn't get to talk about this in the previous WrestleMania since that one opened with the Belfast Brawl, but CM Punk won the Money in the Bank match and cashed in on the first person to ever cash in, which was Edge. Lo and behold, Punk wins for a second consecutive year, and much to the delight of the crowd, that would eventually turn not so much to the delight of the crowd on who he cashed in, which was Jeff Hardy. So for me, again, this one goes directly into the great category, and anything lower than great would just be wrong. And then we have WrestleMania 26 as a tag team opener with Big Show and Miz, otherwise known as Show Miz, taking on the team of John Morrison and R-Truth. In case you hadn't noticed, Big Show had become one of those guys that they threw into tag teams with other single wrestlers to build a tag team that would win a championship. They did the same with Chris Jericho and Big Show as Jericho, and in this case it was with Show Miz. This match did have some potential, as Morrison and Miz had that bit of history as former tag team partners of Miz and Morrison, now at opposite ends of the ring, but unfortunately we never really got that in this one. What we got was a match that lasted 3 minutes and 20 seconds, and not only did it end abruptly, but in such a demoralizing way. I remember watching this and letting out an audible "that's it," like as if there was more that was supposed to come, and it just ended without any warning. And I have to admit, it was really bad. It was one of those finishes that just took a pin into the cushion of the crowd and just deflated everything. Originally I was going to put this in the bad category, but it's significantly worse than the tag team match from WrestleMania 22, so for that reason I have to include it into the trash pile as well. At WrestleMania 27, we opened up with Edge defending the World Heavyweight Championship against Alberto Del Rio. This one may be a bit of a hot take for some and maybe not for others, but the match just wasn't for me. I was never big on Del Rio's in-ring work, and despite knowing he had a great look, I could just never latch on to the character. His matches really bored me to an extent that I couldn't ignore, and this one wasn't much different. We also had Christian in Edge's corner and Brodus Clay in Del Rio's, which meant they eventually came to blows, and sure enough they did. We get a few submission attempts from both Del Rio and Edge, who utilized their signature moves, which then leads into a spear in the pinfall and Edge retaining. I can't call this match bad because the work they put in was good. It just didn't hold my interest for the majority of it. I think I enjoyed Edge and Christian smashing Del Rio's car after the match more than anything else. For the bout, it's painfully average to me. All right, I think we know where this one's going, and I'm going to spend as much time explaining my decision for this match as it was given. It was trash. If you justify it, you're trash. You're Oscar the Grouch. Sheamus beat Daniel Bryan in 18 seconds, and it was 18 seconds I could have used to sneeze and blow my nose, and that would have been a better usage of my time. For those that know me personally, I was a huge fan of The Shield, so I was obviously going to be invested in their WrestleMania debut when they took on the team of Big Show, Randy Orton, and Sheamus. Mixed into this was their badass entrance of coming down from the crowd in SWAT gear and holding a pack-like mentality. And man, the Shield just had it at this time. Everything they had was gold. If you know the Shield, you knew exactly what you were getting with this match. Seth playing as the showstopper, Dean being the methodical and instrumental member, and Roman playing up the big dog. They were up against some hard hitters too, which helped elevate their value by being on a big stage with them. Now, naturally, you have a team of 3 members who work as a cohesive unit, and then you had the other team where it was just 3 singles wrestlers that were paired together for the same goal that they had in mind, and ultimately it didn't work out in their favor because they could not get on the same page. The match ends with the Shield going over and Big Show being upset that he wasn't tagged into the match. And I really like the storytelling at this point in the match because as Big Show is watching his team member get pinned, he could have done something by getting into the ring, but he chose not to because he was just so pissed off he didn't get the tag. So in the end, the Shield does win this match, and post-match, Big Show attacks both Randy Orton and Sheamus for not getting the tag that he was looking looking for. Ultimately, it sets him up as a heel for the 272nd time that year. We all love a Big Show heel turn, and the Shield end up winning and going on top. As for what I would put this match, I'm going to put this in great. I thought it was a really strong match from start to finish. It was a great showing for all three Shield members, and kudos to Big Show, Orton, and Sheamus for making them look good at the same time. So next up is a big one, as WrestleMania 30 opened up with Daniel Bryan going one-on-one with the head of the Authority, Triple H. The winner of this match would be injected into the main event along with Randy Orton and Batista for the World Heavyweight Championship. The whole lead up into this match was absolutely brilliant, and Daniel Bryan rebelling against the system and trying to prove that he wasn't just a catchphrase and someone who could do a few moves. He was the greatest professional wrestler in the business, and the fans wanted him at the top. The only issue was the Authority saw it differently. To them, Daniel Bryan was just a B+ player. Daniel Bryan was the ultimate underdog going into WrestleMania 30. He had the Authority and what felt like the entire system against him at the time. No matter how much the fans supported him, no matter how loud they chanted, or how many matches Bryan would win, it was never enough. In this match, Bryan played up a shoulder injury, which meant he was battling the cerebral assassin with one arm. And did I mention this match went over 20 minutes? This was a pure beatdown, meant to build up the sympathy from the crowd and lead into a comeback, and my goodness was it glorious to watch it unfold. Bryan reversed a pedigree, followed by another reversal out of a back body drop, which conveniently placed Daniel Bryan in the corner to set up for his running knee. And when I tell you the crowd exploded when he connected with that running knee, it's the understatement of the year. The end result is Daniel Bryan hits the running knee, gets the pinfall, and he is now in the main event of WrestleMania 30, which if you combine both the opening and main event of WrestleMania that year, Daniel Bryan wrestled close to an hour that night. So this obviously deserves a spot in the GOAT category. I think it goes no lower than GOAT, quite honestly. It was one of the best WrestleMania openers of all time, and it's worthy of this spot. So at WrestleMania 31, they actually bring back the ladder match, except instead of it being the Money in the Bank ladder match, it's for the Intercontinental Championship this time. And ironically, Daniel Bryan is in the opening match for this year's WrestleMania as well. The difference is it's for the Intercontinental Championship, and it's a 7-man ladder match for the title. And this match had some great names in it too. You had Wade Barrett entering the match as the champion. You had Daniel Bryan, of course, Dean Ambrose, Dolph Ziggler, Luke Harper, R-Truth, and the glorious one, Stardust. Similar to previous ladder matches of this magnitude, we had a mix of different characters, from fan favorites like Daniel Bryan and Dolph Ziggler to crazy personalities like R-Truth and Stardust, and then the completely unhinged Luke Harper and Dean Ambrose. This match had tremendous spots like Luke Harper powerbombing Ambrose to the outside through a ladder. You had zigzag from the top of the ladder. Stardust brought out some gem-encrusted ladder of his own, only for it to get smashed. This match was absolutely insane. At the end of the match, we had two of the biggest fan favorites of this match climbing up the ladder at the same time, as Daniel Bryan was on one side and Dolph Ziggler was on the other. And they were going ham, punching each other nonstop on top of that ladder and trying to get one up in order to knock the other one down. And at one point, they were just exchanging headbutts like crazy. Eventually, Daniel Bryan does get the upper hand. He knocks Dolph Ziggler off the ladder, claims the IC title, and for a second consecutive year, we have Daniel Bryan going over in the WrestleMania opener. I will say I did enjoy this match, but not as much as the previous Money in the Bank ladder matches. To no fault of anyone, it was still a good match, and for that reason, I'm going to place it in good category. At WrestleMania 32 in 2016, we're right back again with a 7-man ladder match for the Intercontinental Championship, and this time it's Kevin Owens defending against the likes of Dolph Ziggler, The Miz, Sami Zayn, Sin Cara, Stardust, and Zack Ryder. And again, for another match, we have tons of personalities that have chemistry with each other from previous history. And I have to say, the first 5 minutes of this match was absolutely bonkers, as guys were chucking ladders at each other. We had Sin Cara doing springboard sentons to the outside, and guys are just flying everywhere. This match also didn't feature bigger guys like in previous years, and even Kevin Owens, being the larger of the 7 guys, wasn't like the Mark Henrys or the Big Shows or Kanes of the matches. And on top of that, Kevin Owens could fly like everyone else, so it was a mix of good personalities, but similar styles. And in this match, we also got another Stardust classic. If you remember from the previous year, he had that gem-encrusted ladder, and in this one, he had a polka dot ladder, which was painted all black and yellow polka dots everywhere. And at one point, he tried to use it to win. Kevin Owens intervened and then just took the ladder and chucked it out of the ring. By far, my favorite spot of this match was the frog splash Kevin gave to Sami while Sami was lying on top of a ladder. If you go back and watch this, the moment feels really special because as Kevin Owens is climbing to the top rope, you see all the fans rising to their feet as he's getting to the top rope. So it was one of those sights to see, and it was a tremendous spot. And honestly, the finish of this match gave us a WrestleMania moment that I don't think anyone has forgotten since. It involved Zack Ryder claiming the Intercontinental Championship, which, if you remember for a time, Zack Ryder was one of those guys that was trying to get over, and the system felt like it was holding him back and holding him down. And this was that moment that he got where he finally rose to the occasion, grabbed the title, and the crowd went insane for this match. So I think for the overall scheme of the match and how everything went and how exciting it was, and then you get the finish where Zack Ryder finally gets his win, you have to put it in great. And for me, it's going into the great category. WrestleMania 33 opened up with Shane McMahon taking on AJ Styles in a one-on-one match. And this came because AJ Styles felt like he was getting screwed over time and time again and felt like he was getting the short end of the stick and put all the blame on Shane McMahon. And that's what led to this match. We had AJ Styles who felt like he was being slighted against Shane McMahon, the higher power who was holding him back, or at least what AJ Styles felt was the case. And for me, it's really hard to rank Shane McMahon matches because I feel like they're pretty much all the same. He gets into a match with someone that is able to carry the flow of everything. You think back to King of the Ring when he fought Kurt Angle, and Kurt Angle carried the entire match and made sure that he was kept safe at all times. And in this one, I felt it was a little bit different. I felt like Shane did hold up his end of the stick, and both AJ Styles and Shane McMahon looked really good in this match. To my surprise, I thought I was going to like this match not as much as previous AJ Styles matches, but for the most part, it was highly enjoyable. So naturally, AJ Styles was never losing this match. I don't think anyone thought at any point Shane McMahon was going to go over, but I will give them credit for putting some doubt into the minds of many, because at some points, Shane looked like he was inching closer and closer to a win. The one thing that really annoyed me was the referee bump spot. I get that we needed it to set up the coast to coast with the garbage can propped up, and that part makes sense, but it took so much away from this match and what I thought was turning into a really great one. Overall, we needed that coast to coast spot because Shane McMahon will always do it, and the ref bump just took away so much for me. So in this case, I would have originally put it in great, and I find it really hard to put an AJ Styles match into anything lower than great, but because of the finish and how they went about it, I have to put it in good. At WrestleMania 34, we got ourselves a triple threat match for the Intercontinental Championship. Gee, they really love featuring the title in the opening match of WrestleMania at one point. In this one, we had Miz defending against Finn Balor and Seth Rollins in a match that I felt most expected would be good. Triple threat matches usually follow a pattern of one guy being incapacitated or thrown out of the ring while the two others duke it out, and then the third guy comes in, dumps one of the two in the ring, and takes over that spot. But in this case, it wasn't really much that same pattern. We did get a little bit of it from the start, but I felt like Balor, Rollins, and Miz did really good with mixing the chemistry around and keeping all three participants in the match at various points. For a match that went over 15 minutes, I never thought that it got boring at any point or felt like it was dragging on. It was really just one of those matches where you're invested the entire time, and 15 minutes feels like it was 5 minutes. Eventually, Rollins does take it, first curb stomping Balor while he was attempting to pin Miz, and then hitting Miz with a curb stomp to pick up the win. Overall, it's a solid match, and I have to put it in good category because it just falls short of that greatness, but I do feel that putting this in good is the best place to put it. Unfortunately, I don't have much good to say about the opening match for WrestleMania 35, as it featured Seth Rollins taking on Brock Lesnar for the Universal Championship. So Seth Rollins won the 2019 Royal Rumble, becoming the #1 contender for the Universal title and getting that WrestleMania match. But what happened was Paul Heyman came out to open the show and announced that if they're not going on last, they might as well go on first. And what ended up happening was we had the Universal Championship match to open up WrestleMania 35. Now, I know that the official time for this match was 2 minutes and 30 seconds, but it understates what happened prior to the bell ringing, which was Brock Lesnar beating the crap out of Seth Rollins from one side of the arena to the other. It was pretty ugly and involved some spots that looked pretty gruesome, but eventually once the match does get underway, that's when all things unfold. Now, the match does follow your typical standard Brock Lesnar type of match where you get suplex after suplex after suplex and him pacing around the ring looking menacing until eventually the ref takes a bump, which you know is going to set up for something. So what ends up happening is Seth Rollins gives a low blow to Brock Lesnar, followed by a hat trick of curb stomps, and we have a new Universal Champion in 2 minutes and 30 seconds. I will say the shine of crowning a new champion at WrestleMania 35 is a nice spot to have, but otherwise this match was absolute trash. I don't like it when you have a Universal Championship match opening up WrestleMania. It's not the first time it happened, but it won't be the last either. And overall, lasting just 2 minutes and 30 seconds was an insult to both guys. So for me, it just goes right into trash. WrestleMania 36 went down in history as the only WrestleMania to take place during the pandemic. And this also happens to be the first WrestleMania to have not one, but 2 shows. Night 1 featured the Kabuki Warriors, Asuka and Kairi Sane, defending the women's tag team titles against the team of Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross, a team we could possibly see happening again. Right off the bat, this one was going to feel extremely weird to me because of the fact that there was no crowd noise due to there being no fans in attendance. And the result is that you hear the wrestlers talking throughout the match pretty clearly. And when they would yell to get the crowd going, there was no crowd to get going. So they just were shouting at an empty arena. The match itself was fun to watch as you have Asuka and Kairi Sane, 2 world-class wrestlers, and Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross trying to become 2-time tag team champions. It did get off to a bit of a slow start and a bit weird as Kairi Sane was toying around with Alexa Bliss and messing with her hair a little bit and treating her like a kid, which does play off that story that the Kabuki Warriors are that much superior than Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross. I will say this is probably Nikki Cross's best match up until this point. She got her fair share of the spotlight in the match and stood out by far among the 4 women involved. At certain points, the Kabuki Warriors were well on their way to winning this match, but Nikki Cross found a way to kick out and fight just a little longer. Eventually, Alexa and Nikki come back and beat the Kabuki Warriors in just over 15 minutes, and weirdness aside, this was a good match to open up the show with. I will say it is the weaker of the 2 matches in 2020, but because of the stellar work that all 4 women put into this one, I'm going to put it into good category. Night 2 of WrestleMania 36 featured Charlotte Flair challenging the NXT Women's Champion, Rhea Ripley, in what would be the first of many encounters between the two. I love the idea going into this match of Rhea being the rising star with tons of potential, facing off against the experienced and accomplished Charlotte. It was almost like a student versus teacher vibe, and Rhea would eventually join the main roster 10 months later as part of the Raw brand. It really showed that the WWE had placed tons of stock into Rhea as they gave her a 20.5-minute match against Charlotte Flair on the WrestleMania stage. And just that experience alone can set a career up for great success, and as we see it in 2025, I think we can all say that Rhea is pretty accomplished herself. Charlotte played up the veteran heel role very well, keeping Rhea grounded and isolating her legs in order to build towards the figure 4, and Rhea had outbursts of emotion that powered out of Charlotte's offense and allowed her to build up her own momentum. The story being told was some of the best women's wrestling you could ask for, and both women put everything they had into setting the match up in chapters that ultimately led into an emotional finish. Charlotte Flair wins the match, and I know, all jokes aside, the match was really good and it felt justified for Charlotte to win this one. Is it in GOAT category? I don't think so. It falls short of that, but I'm willing to put this one into great. At WrestleMania 37, we have the crowd back, and we are also featuring the WWE Championship in the opening match once again. This time around, Drew McIntyre earned this chance via the Elimination Chamber, so it doesn't feel as weird compared to the Seth Rollins-Brock Lesnar match from a few years prior. And this match was as old school can get, as 2 very large men playing up their powerhouse offense and trying to one-up each other, and that took center stage of this match. I mean, Lashley's like, 6'3", 273 pounds, and Drew is 6'5", 275 pounds. So they're both very similar in size, and that's a whole lot of mass in the ring. I also have to give WWE a round of applause for this one, allowing them to go over 18 minutes and putting on an absolute banger of a match. It was a treat to see them exchange blows and test their strength against one another. It was really one of those cases where the ball was in anyone's court, and it felt like that old school vibe from the mid 80s when you look at the Tito Santana's versus the Executioner match. It was similar to that in the sense that it was 2 very large opponents taking on each other, and you didn't really know who was going to win. I think the finish of the match where Bobby Lashley won by submission was the right way to go about it, just because it was a little unrealistic of seeing either man get knocked down for the 3 count. So having the submission kind of evades that and makes both men look strong at the end. What I will say is that I really hate the Hurt Locker. I don't understand how a submission move like that can knock someone out. You look at the setup of that move and it's applying pressure to the back of the neck. So I don't know how you can knock someone out using that move. And it's just one of those little gripes I've had over the time where it was either the Hurt Locker or the Chris Masters Master Lock, where it just made no sense to me. But in this case, it does knock out Drew McIntyre, which leads to the win for Bobby Lashley. As for what I would rate this match, I think I'm going to put it also in great. I think that it made both Drew and Bobby look like absolute superstars in the match, which is what you could ask for. And overall, for a WWE Championship match, I don't think you could ask for any more. So I'm going to put it in great. WrestleMania 37 Night 2 began with Randy Orton taking on The Fiend, the alter ego of Bray Wyatt, alongside Alexa Bliss. Pre-match, the theatrics that was The Fiend's entrance was just phenomenal to watch. You had Alexa Bliss coming out at first to unwind this jack-in-the-box that was set up by ringside, and The Fiend comes out of it, much to the surprise of everyone, and then he leaps off the box and attacks Randy Orton. Now, unfortunately, that's the most positive I can say about this match because we didn't really get much out of it apart from the initial attack. The match lasted 5 minutes and 50 seconds, and it really didn't have anything going for it. There was no story told. They didn't have really that much chemistry in the ring or that much time to set up anything. And by the end of it, the finish just ruined everything that they had built going into this match. So towards the finish, we had The Fiend setting up Randy Orton for his sister Abigail. And then this weird moment happens where Alexa Bliss has this black ink raining over her face as she's sitting on top of the jack-in-the-box. And this distracts The Fiend enough for Randy Orton to get out of the sister Abigail and hit an RKO on The Fiend, which leads to him winning the match. And post-match, what happens is The Fiend looks confused at Alexa Bliss, who's reaching out to him as black ink is falling down her face. And then the lights go out, and when they come back on, they're both gone. So it left everyone confused. The ending made no sense. It was really rushed. They didn't get enough time in the match. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to put this one in bad. I think they could have done so much more with it. But at the same time, I'm not willing to put it in the trash pile along with the couple that I have here. WrestleMania 38 Night 1 kicked off with the Usos defending their SmackDown Tag Team Championships against the team of Shinsuke Nakamura and Rick Boogs, who made a phenomenal entrance to Shinsuke's theme as Rick Boogs played part of it on the guitar. The match itself was short at just about 6 minutes and 55 seconds, but for what it's worth, I thought that both teams looked really good in the match. There was the spot with Rick Boogs having Jay up on his shoulder, setting up for a move, and Jimmy kind of jumping on top of him to set up that double stack, but it led to Rick Boogs falling with his knee buckling and led to a kayfabe knee injury, which took him out of the match and left Shinsuke all on his own against both Usos. Rick Boogs never got back into this match, which meant Shinsuke had to defend all on his own. It basically led to the Usos winning this match. They hit a bunch of super kicks. They led to a splash, which got a near fall. And then it led to the Usos getting the 1D for the 1-2-3. The Usos defended. And overall, I just thought it was a pretty good match from start to finish. I don't think it's up there with the greats, but it's definitely above average for me. So I'm going to put it in good. Now, on the other hand, Night 2 featured the Raw Tag Team Championships as RK Bro, Randy Orton, and Matt Riddle defended the titles against the Street Profits and Alpha Academy, which was Chad Gable and Otis at the time. For a triple threat match, this was absolutely fantastic. While it did suffer from the two-man in, one-man out trope of triple threat matches, it wasn't distracting for me in this case. What was distracting was Otis's buzz cut that he had at the time and Randy Orton's mustache, which I hope they never bring those back. The fun thing about this match was how good everyone looked in their moments, whether it was Chad Gable playing that annoying heel and hitting German suplexes on everyone, the Street Profits looking unstoppable, and RK Bro playing off their contrasting personalities. You know, how Matt Riddle was kind of laid back, aloof character, and Randy Orton took everything seriously. It was fun to see them interact with one another. The finish of the match included not one but two A+ RKOs as Matt Riddle hit Montez Ford with a springboard RKO off the top rope, followed by Orton hitting one on Chad Gable, who was on the top rope himself. He leapt off, and obviously Orton's going to catch him with the RKO, and it led to the win, meaning that RK Bro defended the Raw Tag Team titles. For what it's worth, the tag team action was non-stop fun. I thought that the spots that they had and the moments of each tag team were great, and the finish was just exhilarating to the point that it elevated the match from a good to a great ranking for me, and that's where I'm going to put this one. On to WrestleMania 39, and Night 1 opens with Austin Theory defending the United States Championship against John Cena. This was the big showdown, with the guy being pushed as the future star of the WWE against the franchise for the last 20 years. This is a situation that I found myself loving, as Theory was definitely a guy you want to build around and develop into a main event talent. Whether that's happening or not these days, who knows? Hopefully it does one day, but for now it's not looking too good. You could say he has the tools similar to what John Cena had before becoming the Doctor of Thugonomics, and maybe one day he puts them all together. I didn't expect John Cena to win this match, but I also didn't expect Theory to go over clean, and that's kind of what we got here. So when he did go over clean, I was stunned. And by stunned, I mean in a good way, not a bad way, because to see someone going over John Cena cleanly on the WrestleMania stage is something that should set up for a future of someone becoming that next big star. As for the match itself, it just falls short of the great category, but I definitely think it was good. If you can kick off a WrestleMania show with a solid Cena match that goes 11 minutes, you're setting yourself up for the rest of the night. And man, save for one or two misses, I think WrestleMania 39 was one of the best WrestleMania cards that we got. So for this one, it's going to go into the good category. On to night 2 of WrestleMania 39, and it was the complete opposite of that, as Brock Lesnar went one-on-one with Omos. Now, nothing against Omos. He's one of those big guys that doesn't do much wrestling, but he's still entertaining to watch. But in this case, he's in a match against Brock Lesnar, who also doesn't do much in the ring these days. And when you put both of them together, you just know you're not going to get that great of quality of match. You had Omos, who's already limited in the ring. You have Lesnar, who basically just does a bunch of suplexes and F5s, and that's really what we got out of this one. We got Omos dominating early on and making Brock Lesnar, of all people, look inferior, only for Lesnar to then set up his usual suplex, F5, and then the match is over. For me, this one's going directly into the trash pile. It wasn't entertaining. I didn't have a lot of fun watching it. It was one of those matches where you just kind of forget about it, and when you do rewatch it, you're reminded of just how bad it was. So this one's going right into the trash pile. Finally, we've reached our final WrestleMania on this list, and it begins with WrestleMania 40's Night 1 matchup against Rhea Ripley and Becky Lynch for the Women's World Heavyweight Championship. Now, as we know, Becky got her shot at the title at Elimination Chamber, winning that match and entering against a dominant champion in Rhea Ripley. In 17 minutes and 5 seconds, these two women put on a clinic. Yes, Rhea did most of the legwork throughout the match, but there were some great spots that had me going, oh crap. Like, for example, when they had the electric chair drop set up and then it spilled over the top rope onto the floor, but then had both of them landing, and Rhea had her feet on the ground and then dropped Becky onto the ground outside the ring. I thought it was one of those spots that was really well pulled off and looked great. There were also a lot of false finishes following Rhea continuously planting Becky with the Riptide, to the point that there was this little belief that I thought Becky might win this, especially after she started kicking out of Riptides. Obviously she didn't, and I think most of us heading into WrestleMania thought Rhea was going to retain, and it was absolutely the right move. I was on the fence about this one being great, but I think I'm going to slip it into the good category. As strong of the match as it was, I don't think it was as good as the Rhea Charlotte match from WrestleMania 36, so I think good is where it should go. And that brings us to night 2 of WrestleMania 40, where the Men's World Heavyweight Championship is on the line as the workhorse champion Seth Rollins defends against Drew McIntyre, who also won the Elimination Chamber match for the men's side. The sad thing about this match is that it really suffers from the Seth Rollins knee injury that he suffered. It really limited things that he could do in the ring, and it showed. And for what it's worth, I do think they pulled it off really well with the story that they told, where Rollins was for sure injured and it was hard to cover that up. So instead, they played it off that Drew McIntyre was going to take advantage, and at the very beginning of the match when the bell rang, he hit a claymore, got that near fall, and it pretty much set the stage for the rest of the match. Now, what's crazy to me is that this match went on for 10.5 minutes, which with the condition Rollins' knee was in, it's insane that he did it all on one leg. I also have to give kudos to Drew McIntyre, who kept Seth safe throughout the match and really made everything look great. Now, I will say that when he hit the Claymore at the beginning of the match, I thought we were getting another case of Daniel Bryan and Sheamus and the match ending in like 30 seconds. Thankfully, that wasn't the case, and overall, we got a really decent match out of it, all things considered. Now, as we all know, Drew McIntyre went on to win the match, held the title for about 5 minutes, and then we got the Damian Priest cash in because of the whole thing with CM Punk. But I'm rating this match only on the bell-to-bell flow of the match, not anything that happened afterwards, whether it was the cash in or the shenanigans with CM Punk. So in terms of the match from bell to bell, I am going to put this in good category, although I will say that if Seth Rollins was completely healthy and the match would have went on a bit longer, I think this could have definitely been up there in the great category. But all things considered, for the fact that this match was still good, I think is a testament to both Rollins and McIntyre and their ability in the ring. So for me, this one also goes into good. And that does it for my rankings. That's pretty much where I'm going to leave everything. I'm comfortable with the amount of matches I have in the good category. I don't think I'd bump anything down to average or into great. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with the list, and I'm curious to know what you all think in the comments down below. So let me know what you would change and if there's anything that I'm way off base. I'm curious to know what you think about my rankings and how you liked each match. Let me know in the comments down below if you agree with me or if you liked or disliked matches that I differed on. If you liked this video, click like. and if you really liked it, subscribe, and be sure to hit the bell to receive all notifications on future videos. As always, this is Shawn signing off, reminding you to be kind to one another and stay safe.